Hey there, welcome to the sermon preview for this week. I'm really glad you're joining me for a couple seconds here today. This week we are continuing on, actually our last week of our Jesus-shaped Testament series, where we're looking back at the Old Testament and we're looking to see how did the Old Testament point to Jesus. So this is our last week. This week is a little bit, I think it's a little bit different because we are going to be looking at how the tabernacle pointed to Jesus. So we've looked at how Jesus was at creation. We have looked at how Joseph pointed to Jesus, and this past week we looked at how the Passover pointed to Jesus. So this was a person or an event. Now we're looking at objects. Are there objects in the Old Testament that point to Jesus? So we're going to look at the Old Testament. The scriptures that we're going to look at are Exodus 25, verses 8 and 9, and Hebrews chapter 9, verses 11 and 12. So two shorter passages, and we'll use those to dive into a little bit of a deeper understanding of how the tabernacle and the things inside the tabernacle point to Jesus. So if we look into Exodus chapter 25, I just want to read verse 8 here. Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in their midst. So there's something about this sanctuary in which God will dwell. And so there's something about dwelling. And then we look at verse 9. Exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle and of all its furniture, so you shall make it. So God is giving some very specific things, ways to make the tabernacle, what to make out of it, how to make it, what to use to make it, the things to put inside of it. And so there's some very specific things here, which whenever God gets specific, which he always does, is for a reason, right? And so he is giving the tabernacle for a very specific reason in which he should dwell, but then he's also giving the tabernacle very specific things in order that it may point to something. And looking at it from the end, we see that it will point to Jesus. And so we're going to look at how the tabernacle in general points to Jesus, but then we'll see how the different furniture within the tabernacle points to Jesus. So we've got the bronze altar, the bronze laver or basin, the golden lampstand, the table, the altar of incense, and then the Ark of the Covenant. So this may feel a little bit different for you. Some of you may think, oh man, the tabernacle, that is the most boring part of the Bible. Looking at, the Numbers, the book of Numbers, and all the different dimensions and all that stuff, that's the most boring part of the Bible. But when we look at it, we slow down, we look at the details, and we see that God instituted this specific thing because it points to Jesus. We see it take on an entirely new light. We see it give us an entire new meaning as to why it's important for us. So we're going to look at this. We're going to look at how the tabernacle and how the furniture within the tabernacle points to Jesus. And hopefully it will give us new understanding of what God has been trying to do throughout this entire story of redemption of humanity, going from creation to Jesus on the cross and resurrecting from the grave. So from beginning to end, we're trying to understand how does the whole story point to Jesus. So again, really excited for this week. This is our fourth Sunday in this, our last Sunday in this before we move on to a new series starting in August. So we're going to see how does the tabernacle point to Jesus. So I encourage you, read these couple passages, do some research on your own, and see what are some connections that you make yourself. How do you see that Jesus and the tabernacle are connected? How does the tabernacle point to Jesus, and why might God use it in that way? So I'm excited for this Sunday. I hope you are as well. We'll see you in Sanctuary 9:15. Take care.